Hello my fellow YouTubers and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to explore how to install Windows 11 into a VirtualBox in order to show how we can use this for things like deployment, or we can just use this for lab testing. So plug in your USB thumb drive. This is the same thumb drive that we've created in a previous video, where we created a bootable USB flash drive for Windows 11. Open up your VirtualBox, and inside VirtualBox what we're going to do is we can set the Windows 11 name, and then we are going to click Next. Once we're done here, we just select our hardware. We want to push it up as close on the green as humanly possible, and we want to just enable EFI for this as well. Hard disk size 80 gig will be fine, but we are going to make this a little bit higher. So we'll make this 120 gig, and we're just going to leave it at that. So we're just going to keep it as dynamic, and then we're just going to quickly take stock of our machine that we have just built. So there's our base memory, our hard disk size, all done. So on the left hand side you'll see Windows 11 has now been created. So that is a computer. Click on settings, then we're going to go to USB, and we're going to click on the add USB button and choose verbatim. Verbatim is obviously just the make of USB thumb drive that we're using. And then of course we can just continue to take stock, and then we'll go back into settings, and from there we can explore for any additional options that we might require. Two options we do need is EFI and secure boot, and I would highly recommend that your TPM module is version 2. So please just make sure that that is set. I am going to have another video later on showing how we can still install Windows without these into a virtual machine, but for now this is what's needed. Once you're done, click Start. What this is going to do is it's going to show a little pane on the right hand side. It's an information pane, just showing that it is powering up the virtual machine, and then it's going to open a new window, and in that window, in the information pane there, it is going to start to show bits of information as well. So it'll talk about mouse integration as well as auto capture of your keyboard, and what we're doing here is we're actually booting off of the USB thumb drive currently. Choose your settings and then install now. From there you can just leave out the product key. We're going to choose 11 Pro, and then I'm going to just work through the end user license agreement. I highly recommend that you do read this, very important, especially for installation, and click Next. Click on Custom. From here you can set basically anything you want, any partition size. Let's just delete all the partitions again, and I'm just going to create one that's about 60 gigs. You'll notice the different types of partitions as well, and it will then begin to copy the various different files. Now note the partitions themselves, as you noticed previously, is that there are different types of partitions. There's system partitions and things of that nature. So when you do create a partition, it's going to create additional ones as well. We're really just interested in the primary partitions. So all we do is we just keep going. We let it carry on copying. In the meantime, if you want to, you can browse through your Oracle VirtualBoxes and look at different settings. I wouldn't recommend changing anything at this point, but you can still open up your VirtualBox and just keep looking through various different settings to familiarize yourself with this amazing piece of software. Bear in mind, we actually have built a computer inside a computer, and we are installing Windows inside that virtual machine. So you have the full functionality of Windows within there. It's just probably going to be a little bit slower depending on your hardware specifications. So once you're done copying the Windows files, it will then start getting ready for the installation process itself. In other words, it's going to unpack the various different files into the partition that you specified earlier, and through this process really install all the various different system files, etc. needed in order to be able to boot Windows on your computer. So it's all of your boot files, your system files, your DLL files, all of these various different things are going to be installed. And as you know, your computer needs to load certain files in order to be able to boot into this thing called Windows, or your graphical user interface, or GUI. So we're at the 22% mark and counting, and this is still just continuing with the preparation phase, uncompressing the various different files and just pulling out what it needs. Other things worth noting will also be things like driver files, etc. So Windows carries a lot of generic drivers, so it's going to put these in as well, and this will allow us to detect the hardware a little bit further on down the line, and it can then install those generic drivers to make sure that everything is functional. So software, hardware, system files, etc. These are all the various different things that it's actually preparing as part of its installation process, all from that USB thumb drive that we had created in a previous session. So we're at the 77% mark, 79%, we're almost there. 90% mark, the rest should finish up quite quickly now, 98%. And we can now begin installing the various different features that it needs to do. And from there, it will then move on to installing its updates, and then it will then move into the completion phase of the installation. Note how it's rebooted itself. Do not press any buttons or anything like that, just let it go, because you don't want it to boot off the USB again. So just let it keep going, as it will then begin the whole process of now detecting hardware, installing drivers, verifying like file integrity, all of that sort of thing, and while it gets Windows ready for us. You'll notice the VirtualBox insignia. Don't worry too much about that. Generally speaking, if you install this onto a PC, you would see the Windows logo here. This is because we're just installing it into VirtualBox, so sometimes you do have a little bit of its own branding. We've also sped this process up because this can take a fair amount of time depending on your hardware specifications. I've had Windows installed into VirtualBoxes in 15 minutes, and I've had it go for over an hour for Windows Server, for example, depending on your hardware specifications and what you have selected and how many other VirtualBoxes you might have open. Because bear in mind, you can have more than one VirtualBox open, all with different versions of Windows, and then you can network them together and do various different things with them. As I said, this is a great learning tool, especially if you're needing to learn how to work with a new piece of software and you don't want to mess anything up, or if you just want to get more comfortable with the new version of Windows, or perhaps you want to learn how to use Linux. What you can do is you can install Linux into a VirtualBox and then go play around to your heart's content, knowing that if you mess it up, you can just delete the VirtualBox and reinstall. Nice thing about VirtualBox as well is they allow you to create snapshots. We will do a tutorial on the various different pieces and all of the really cool features of VirtualBox, but we're not really too concerned with that right now, otherwise this video would be a very, very long video. So the installation just continues, and so it still continues. Also note all of the icons at the bottom of the window. So you see your little hard drive, it looks like a hard drive, light is flashing green and red, that means that's very busy. You'll notice that you've got a little network icon as well, that is also showing that it's quite busy as well, so it's also going green and red. And of course you can see your little USB icon there as well, that is going red and green all the time. So these indicate that they're just busy, that they are busy doing work from those various different devices. From there we can choose our keyboard layout and our language. It's now going to check for any additional updates that it might require. You'll notice that it's just finishing up the little final steps. So once at this point, it's now going to ask you what you would like your name to be. This can vary. Just bear in mind that it shouldn't be more than 15 characters, and there are special characters like dashes, for example, underscores, that should not be used either. So just important to note that. We're going to keep this relatively simple, and what we're going to do is we will just use a very basic name. Just use something like, for example, Win11. The PC will now restart and it will reboot Windows, and once we reach this point, then it's now going to just finish up any of its last of its housekeeping before it will start to ask us a series of different types of questions. There are different ways that we can actually install this, and we're going to use the school setup. Then we're going to click on sign in options, and then we're going to put in our own name. So for example, JPC, and next. Once we're done with this, we can just put in a password. The password can really be anything, and click next. Confirm your password just to ensure that everything's correct there, and then you'll need to provide answers for 3 secret questions. In this particular example, I'm just using Joe for all of them, but obviously whatever you write down here, make sure you document. Be careful, some of these can be case sensitive. We're just going to keep going no for the rest of this because we're not really worried about additional services or anything like that. This is a virtual machine, so there's nothing here that we want to capture or pass on to Microsoft or anything of that nature. So we'll just continue to click on no. Also note we haven't provided anything in the way of a product key or anything like that. So this is a great way of getting past that as well. So this is why I generally am using Pro, is you can actually choose the school version, which lets you pass. Now the interesting thing about not having a product key is obviously it means it's not registered, which means that there are one or two things that are going to be locked down in Windows, but for the most part everything will work as planned. It's just really just some of the themes etc that will not work, but the rest of the various different features such as networking will. So there we are, all installed. Thank you very much. I hope you have an amazing day further. I hope you learned something new, and I'll see you again soon.